Take one step. That single step you just took landed on solid ground, the way every step you've ever taken has. The surface holds you. It always holds you. It feels less like a thing and more like a fact. The floor of reality. Fixed and finished and done. But that ground you're standing on is thinner, compared to the planet beneath it, than the skin on an apple. Press your hand flat against the floor. Everything you have ever known, every city, every ocean, every mountain, every person who has ever lived, exists in a shell so thin that if the Earth were shrunk to the size of that apple, the entire human world would fit inside the peel. And underneath that peel, the planet goes down for 6x371 kilometers. Layer after layer, each one hotter, heavier, and stranger than the last. There is solid rock that flows like syrup. There is an ocean of liquid metal. There is a ball of iron at the center hotter than the surface of the sun that somehow stays solid. Here's my promise. By the end of these 15 minutes, you'll understand what's actually underneath that single step. All the way down, layer by layer, to the very center of the world. And the last layer is the strangest place on Earth. So let's go straight down. We start with the peel. But before we drop, hold one number in your mind, because it makes everything that follows hit harder. 6,371 kilometers. That's the distance from where you're sitting to the exact center of the planet, straight down. On the surface, that's nothing. You could fly that far in a single afternoon, but no one has ever traveled even a fraction of it downward. We have sent spacecraft billions of kilometers across the solar system, and the deepest we have ever physically reached into our own world is about 12 kilometers. So as we descend, remember, almost everything we're about to see, no human eye has ever witnessed directly. We pieced it together from echoes, from rare stones, from the faint signals the planet sends up to us. This is a map of a country no one has ever visited. Let's begin. The first layer is the only one you will ever touch. It's called the crust, and it's barely there. Everything humans have ever built sits on this layer. Every road, every foundation, every tunnel, every mine. And it is astonishingly thin. Under the oceans, it can be as little as 5 kilometers thick. Under the continents, it averages around 30, reaching maybe 70 kilometers beneath the tallest mountain ranges. That sounds like a lot until you remember the planet is over 6,000 kilometers deep. The crust is less than 1% of the way down. We live our entire lives on the outermost rind, and we have never once been below it. And even this thin rind comes in two completely different kinds. The crust beneath the oceans is thin, dense, and surprisingly young, constantly being created at underwater ridges and pulled back down into the planet elsewhere, recycled over and over, so that almost none of the ocean floor is more than a couple of 100 million years old. But the crust beneath the continents is a different story entirely. It is thicker, lighter, and ancient. Some of the rock locked into the hearts of the continents has been sitting there for billions of years, nearly as old as the Earth itself. So the ground under a city can be older than the oceans, older than complex life, a survivor from a time when the planet was barely formed. You may be standing, right now, on some of the oldest solid material that exists anywhere on the surface of the world. Let me prove how thin our reach really is. The deepest hole human beings have ever dug took 2 decades of work. Engineers drilled straight down, year after year, fighting heat and pressure the whole way. They reached about 12 kilometers, and then they had to stop, because the rock at the bottom had become so hot it behaved less like stone and more like soft plastic, and the drill could go no further. 12 kilometers. After 20 years of trying, and it wasn't even close to breaking through the crust. And the strangest part is what they found on the way down. The deeper they drilled, the more the predictions broke. They expected the rock to be dry far below the surface. Instead, they found water, trapped in the stone kilometers down, where no water should have been able to exist. They expected dead, lifeless rock. Instead, they pulled up traces of microscopic life from depths that should have been sterile. Every kilometer down rewrote what the textbooks promised would be there. The hole didn't just go deep. It proved how little we actually knew about the layer we live on. We have walked on the moon, which is 384,000 kilometers away, but we have never reached the bottom of the thin shell we're standing on right now. That's the strange truth this whole journey rests on. We know more about the far side of the moon than we do about the rock a few kilometers beneath our feet. And the crust isn't even resting on solid ground. It's floating. Because the next layer down, despite being solid stone, moves. The second layer breaks the rules you were taught about rock. It's called the upper mantle, and it flows. Drop below the crust and you enter a layer of hot, dense rock that stretches down for hundreds of kilometers. Here is the part that sounds impossible. This rock is solid. You could hold a piece of it in your hand, and yet, over thousands and millions of years, under the heat and the pressure, it slowly moves, flowing like the world's thickest, slowest river, creeping along at about the speed your fingernails grow. This slow-flowing rock is the secret engine behind almost everything on the surface. The crust we just visited is broken into enormous pieces, and those pieces float on top of this moving layer like rafts on a current. As the rock beneath them flows, the pieces drift. They pull apart, opening oceans. They crash together, raising mountain ranges. They grind past each other, building pressure that the planet eventually releases all at once. Every continent on Earth is on a journey, riding this layer, moving a few centimeters every year, about as fast as your hair grows. Wait long enough, and the whole map of the world rearranges itself. And here's how we know this layer truly flows, not as a guess, but as something you can still measure today. During the last ice age, enormous sheets of ice, kilometers thick, pressed down on entire continents, and their sheer weight slowly pushed the land down into the soft rock below, like a hand pressing into a mattress. Then the ice melted and lifted away, and the land began to rise back up. Slowly, it is still rising right now, thousands of years later, in places that were once buried under ice, climbing by a few millimeters every single year, the ground itself rebounding as the rock beneath it flows back into place. The continents are quite literally still standing up from a weight that vanished 10,000 years ago. That is how slow and how real the flow of this layer is. So the ground isn't fixed at all. It's a fleet of stone rafts, drifting on a sea of flowing rock, and you're standing on one of them right now, moving, very slowly, towards somewhere else. The map in your head is just a single frame of a film that's billions of years long. Quick favor before we go deeper, because what's coming next gets genuinely strange. Tell me in the comments which country you're listening from right now. I want to see how far across the surface this signal spreads while we head toward the center. Then keep going with me, because the next layer is hiding an ocean. The third layer holds a secret we only confirmed recently. It's the transition zone, and there's water trapped inside the rock. Sink to a depth between about 410 and 660 kilometers down, and the rock changes again. The crushing pressure forces the minerals to rearrange into denser, more compact forms. One of these minerals does something no one expected. It can lock water away inside its own structure, holding it not as a liquid pool, but woven into the stone itself, atom by atom. And here is the scale that stops people cold. There may be as much water trapped inside this layer of rock as in all the oceans on the surface. Possibly several times more, an entire planet's worth of water, hidden hundreds of kilometers down, not sloshing around in a cavern, but sealed inside the crystal structure of the rock, invisible and immense. We didn't find it by drilling. We found it the way we explored in the first episode of this series, locked inside a rare diamond that was carried up from this depth, a tiny flaw in the stone that turned out to be a fingerprint of a hidden ocean. Think about what that means for the word ocean. You picture waves, a horizon, a shoreline. But the largest body of water on Earth might have none of those things. It might be a layer of stone, hundreds of kilometers beneath your feet, holding more water than every sea you've ever seen, and it would feel completely dry to the touch. We are barely a tenth of the way to the center, and the planet has already redefined what water even is. And consider how close we came to never knowing this at all. The diamond that revealed it was tiny, flawed, and commercially worthless, the kind that gets discarded without a second look. But sealed inside it was a microscopic speck of that deep mineral, still holding its water, carried up from hundreds of kilometers down and frozen in time inside the hardest substance on Earth. One scientist looked closely at the flaw that everyone else would have thrown away and found an ocean. It's a reminder that the biggest discoveries about our own planet aren't always waiting at the bottom of some dramatic expedition. Sometimes they're sitting in a rejected stone, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to look at the imperfection instead of past it. And we're about to leave the realm of anything familiar entirely. Because below this hidden ocean lies the largest layer of them all. The fourth layer is the biggest single part of the entire planet. It's the lower mantle, and it's a world of pressure beyond imagination. Below 660 kilometers, the mantle continues down, and down, and down, all the way to nearly 2,900 kilometers deep. This single layer makes up more than half of the entire Earth by volume. It is, by far, the largest thing on the planet, and you have almost certainly never heard its name. It is built mostly from one mineral, formed only under this extreme pressure. A mineral so common down here that it is, in fact, the most abundant material in the entire Earth. The most common mineral on the planet exists in a place no human will ever see, and almost no one on the surface has ever heard of it. The conditions here are difficult to even picture. The pressure is over 1,000,000 times the pressure of the air around you right now. The temperature climbs past 2,000 degrees and keeps rising. And yet, like the layers above, this rock still creeps and flows in vast, slow currents. Enormous columns of hotter rock rising over millions of years, cooler rock sinking back down, a churning so slow that a single loop can take longer than the age of the dinosaurs. This is the planet's deep engine. The slow churn of this layer is what ultimately drives the drifting plates far above, what feeds the rising columns that build islands, what keeps the whole machine of the surface in motion. Everything you saw in the upper layers, the drifting continents, the rising mountains, is being powered from down here in a layer larger than everything else on Earth combined, turning so slowly that to it, all of human history is a single instant. And remember, no one has ever seen any of this. No drill will ever reach a tenth of the way down here. Everything we know about this enormous layer, we learned by listening. When a large quake shakes the planet, it sends waves traveling all the way through the interior and out the other side. Those waves speed up, slow down, and bend depending on what they pass through. Scientists all over the world record exactly when they arrive, and from those arrival times, millions of them, gathered over decades, they slowly reconstruct the shape and the makeup of layers thousands of kilometers below. We have effectively built an image of the deepest half of our planet out of sound alone, from the surface, never once touching it. The largest structure on Earth is something we have only ever heard. And right at the very bottom of this layer, where it meets the metal below, the rock changes one final time. The pressure here is so extreme that the most common mineral transforms yet again into an even denser form, a thin, strange floor at the base of the rock, sitting directly against the heat of the molten core. In places, this boundary is wildly uneven. There are pockets down here where the solid rock may be partly melting against the core's heat, forming patches so unusual that seismic waves nearly stop when they pass through them. It is the deepest solid ground on the entire planet, the last surface before everything turns to liquid metal, and it is a landscape stranger than anything on the world above. We've reached the bottom of the rock now. Below this point, the planet stops being stone at all. If this journey has changed how you see the ground even a little, that's the moment to tap the like button. It genuinely helps this kind of deep dive reach people who'd never come across it. Because the next layer is not solid. It's an ocean of metal, and it's the reason you're alive. The fifth layer is liquid, and it protects the entire planet. It's the outer core, an ocean of molten metal. Cross below 2,900 kilometers and the rock ends. The planet changes its very state of matter. For the next 2,200 kilometers down, the Earth is a vast ocean of liquid metal, mostly iron and nickel, hot enough to glow, swirling endlessly in slow, enormous currents. There is more liquid metal down here than there is water in every ocean on the surface, and it never stops moving. And that movement is not pointless. It is, quite literally, the reason life exists on the surface at all. As all that liquid metal churns and swirls, it generates an invisible force that wraps around the entire planet, the magnetic field. You can't see it. You feel it only through a compass needle, but it stretches far out into space and deflects the constant stream of charged particles flowing from the sun, a stream that would otherwise strip away the air, layer by layer, over millions of years, until the sky was gone. So every breath you take is protected by a metal ocean you will never see, churning thousands of kilometers below you. The compass that guided every explorer across every sea in history was never pointing at the North Pole. It was answering to the motion of this liquid layer. There is an ocean inside the Earth that has no water at all, made of glowing metal, and it has been quietly keeping the surface alive since before the first living thing appeared. And this shield is not perfectly steady. It has a hidden history written into the rocks. Many times across the planet's life, the magnetic field has weakened, faltered, and then flipped completely, so that north became south, and south became north. We know this because as molten rock cooled and hardened over millions of years, the magnetic minerals inside it froze in place, pointing toward wherever north was at that moment, locking a record of the field into stone, like a tape recording made by the planet itself. Read those rocks in order, and you can watch the field reverse, again and again, throughout history. The churning ocean of metal that protects us has changed direction more times than anyone can count. And one day, far in the future, it will almost certainly do it again. The shield is alive, in its way. It moves. It remembers. And it has been doing both for billions of years beneath our feet. And in the very middle of that liquid ocean of metal sits the final layer, the heart of the world. And it should not be possible. The sixth and final layer is the strangest place on Earth. It's the inner core, and everything about it defies common sense. Fall all the way through the liquid metal ocean to the dead center of the planet, and you reach a solid ball of iron about the size of the moon. This is the core of the core, the very middle of your world, 6,371 kilometers beneath that single step you took at the start. And it breaks every instinct you have about how matter should behave. Start with the temperature. The inner core is roughly as hot as the surface of the sun, thousands upon thousands of degrees. At that heat, iron should be a liquid or a gas. It has no business being solid, and yet it is solid, a single, vast, crystal-like mass of metal. The reason is the pressure. The entire weight of the planet presses inward on this point from every direction at once, squeezing the iron so violently that it cannot melt no matter how hot it gets. Heat that intense, frozen solid by force alone. It is the hottest solid object on or in the Earth, held together by nothing but the crush of the world above it. And it spins to its own rhythm. For years, careful measurements suggested the inner core was turning at a slightly different speed from the rest of the planet, drifting ahead like a wheel inside a wheel. More recently, the evidence shifted again, hinting that its motion had slowed and may even have reversed relative to the surface, rocking gently back and forth on a cycle that takes decades to complete. We are still reading its movement only through the faint echoes of quakes that pass all the way through it. But the picture is clear enough. There is a moon-sized ball of solid metal at the center of your planet, hotter than the surface of the sun, and it does not keep time with the ground you stand on. and it is slowly growing. Bit by bit, across the ages, the liquid metal of the layer above freezes onto its surface, and the solid heart of the Earth gets a little larger every million years. That freezing helps stir the ocean of metal around it, which means the inner core, simply by growing, helps power the magnetic shield that keeps the surface alive. The center of the Earth is quietly protecting you, and it has no idea you exist. Billions of years from now, it may freeze solid all the way through. The churning above may slow, and the shield may fade. But not for an unimaginably long time. For now, the heart still turns. And there may be one more secret buried even here, at the very center of the center. In recent years, scientists studying the deepest echoes of quakes have found hints of something inside the inner core itself. An innermost ball. A core within the core, where the iron seems to be arranged in a subtly different way than the metal surrounding it. If it's real, it may be a fingerprint of some ancient event in the planet's distant past, a change so old it was frozen into the very middle of the world and has sat there, untouched, ever since. We are talking about the single most remote place that exists on Earth, the center of the center of the center. And we are still discovering that it has layers we never knew about. The deepest point of our planet is still keeping secrets, billions of years after it formed, and we are only now beginning to hear them. So now you know what's underneath that single step. Stand up. Feel the floor again. It still feels solid. It still feels permanent. It still feels like the fixed and finished floor of reality. But you know better now. Beneath your shoes is a shell of rock thinner than the skin of an apple. A shell we have never once dug through. Below that, solid stone that flows like a river, carrying the continents on its back. Below that, an ocean's worth of water hidden inside the rock. Below that, the largest layer of the planet, made of the most common mineral you'd never heard of. Below that, an ocean of glowing metal that keeps the sky in place. And at the very center, a heart of solid iron, hotter than the sun's surface, spinning to a clock all its own. 6 layers, 6 worlds, stacked one inside the next, every one of them beneath every step you have ever taken. We send machines to map distant planets, and the most extraordinary structure we know of is the one we've been standing on the entire time, and we've only ever reached 12 kilometers into it. We have touched the moon, but never the bottom of our own ground. So here's the question I'll leave you with. All of this, the flowing rock, the hidden ocean, the metal sea, the spinning heart, has been here the whole time, doing its slow and silent work beneath your feet, holding up everything you've ever known. So the next time the ground feels like the one fixed thing in your life, ask yourself, how well do you really know the world you're standing on? The floor was never just a floor. It was the top of a journey 6,371 kilometers deep.